Thank you all for being here this morning, and again, good morning to all of you. I've found that numbers like the ones coming out of Sudan are a bit hard to grasp. Over 10 million new forcibly displaced people, including over 2 million who fled to neighboring countries in search of safety. The number of Sudanese refugees in Chad doubled in the first 12 months of the conflict, with more individuals from Sudan fleeing to Chad in 1 year than in the previous 20 combined. And then there's the hunger. 25.6 million people who face crisis or worse levels of food insecurity, a third of them facing emergency conditions. And 750,000 people, women and children, the very old and very young, facing famine, starvation, IPC 5 level conditions. People are eating dirt to survive, relying on tree leaves for nutrition. I've talked before about my experience in Chad last year, meeting just a few of the faces of those numbers. How in the hunger ward of the MSF hospital, children were so weak they lacked the energy to even cry. The room was quiet, totally quiet. That level of suffering is occurring all over Sudan, over and over and over again. I've said at this very podium that this is the worst humanitarian crisis in the world, and that has not changed. And sadly, the silence I heard that day in Chad has been met with even more silence across the world. 3 months after the April 15th pledging conference in Paris, only 2/3 of the pledges have been dispersed, and only about a quarter of the response has been funded. All the while, the AL-HAJ border crossing, one of the most important in terms of humanitarian aid flow, continues to be blocked by the SAF. This obstruction is completely unacceptable. To make matters worse, experts predict that the rainy season will decrease already severely restricted cross-border access, all while floodwaters worsen the already dire conditions in IDP camps, putting hundreds of thousands at risk of waterborne diseases. The scale of this crisis is overwhelming. But now is not a moment to throw up our hands. We must continue to fight for the people of Sudan. For our part, since the start of 2024 alone, the United States has committed $500 million to humanitarian assistance in Sudan, aimed at supplying those in need with health and nutrition, education and transit assistance, water and sanitation, shelter, and psychological support. These funds certainly go to those within Sudan, but they also help neighboring countries like Chad and Egypt, South Sudan and Ethiopia, which are taking in more and more asylum seekers and refugees every single day. But we know that need is outpacing funds. Everyone has the responsibility to do more, to give more, if we want to prevent the spread of food insecurity. And so today, I'm proud to announce that the United States Agency for International Development will provide an additional $203 million in funding to the people of Sudan. We hope this new round of aid serves as a call to action for others to follow. Partners will use this funding to build new shelter for refugees or provide cash assistance so that they can pay rent. And it will help children whose lives have been upended by conflict return to school. It will provide emergency food assistance to those who are starving. It will offer medical assistance through mobile clinics, emergency obstetric and neonatal care, and psychological support to people traumatized by violence. And it will help host communities, many of whom face their own challenges as they open their arms and their homes to Sudanese refugees. Look, this money is not a panacea. And so in addition to funding the response to this crisis, we will continue to work steadfastly to address the root causes, to press for more cross-border and cross-line access, to hold those committing violence accountable, and most of all, most importantly, to continue diplomatic efforts to find a path to peace, to bring this horrific conflict to an end and put Sudan back on the path to democracy, stability, and security. And I will say here again, the Security Council should consider all tools at its disposal, including authorizing aid to move from critical crossings, like at the AL-HAJ border into Sudan, as we had once done with cross-border aid into Syria. I'm grateful for all of those partners joining us in this work and undertaking their own individual efforts to end this horrific situation. And with that, I'll take a couple of questions.
Edie, you want to kick us off?